The Void, Series 1, Episode 1, The Naled, Chapter 15. Commander Voigt's team has left the surface and is inbound, Kane announced. Good. Any casualties? None. That's a small miracle, Schafer sighed. Given the activity they could see on the ground through the Revenant's camera streams, they had been extremely lucky to extract with no casualties. The streets were writhing with Naled, with more swarming the locations with every passing second. They started demolishing the command center, perhaps hoping to find more humans, or maybe out of simple rage and frustration. Liberated to Sokolov. The commander's team is en route. Disengage and cover their withdrawal, Schafer ordered. Already on it, Captain. He pondered his next course of action. The simplest option was just to monitor the Naled from orbit and try and gather as much intelligence as possible. He had to reassess the potential for contact as well now. Denham's advice held before the Naled came into contact with them, but did it still after? Schafer's first thought was to try and ease tensions, but the situation had escalated beyond that point now. Schafer needed the commander's input on this. Her recent experience would provide a sense of whether the situation was redeemable at all, though he wasn't optimistic. Sir, we have 2 incoming missiles. At least I think they're missiles. Distance. 5 seconds out, sir. Engage the defense grid. Fire everything. Blitz mode. Grid engaged. There was a distant rumble as automated batteries started firing. Blitz mode entailed firing all forms of defensive countermeasures at an incoming projectile. It was wasteful, but given they had no idea what it was that was fast approaching, better to hedge their bets than waste precious seconds deciding on which system to use. Success, sir. Both targets eliminated. Where the hell did they come from? Unknown, sir. Well, find out. Captain, preliminary analysis suggests they were not missiles, Denham interrupted. What were they then? Looks like a solid projectile, more like a harpoon than a missile. Harpoon? Schafer echoed incredulously. 2 enemy targets identified, Captain. How the hell did they get so close without us noticing? They don't register as conventional ships, sir. They're biological in nature. Some xenospecies use bioships. Why didn't we recognize these? They don't match any known configurations, sir, the tactical officer replied. And they were inert, too. Scans just showed orbital bodies with a biological component. Get external cameras on them. The screen flickered into life, displaying the external view, tracing the trajectory of the harpoons backwards. Nothing could be seen but the planet and a distant moon. Overlay, Schafer reminded. The tactical officer engaged the overlay, and 2 circles appeared on the screen indicating where the ships were, although they remained invisible. Are they in range? Not yet, but closing. It's possible they were testing the waters. Try to see what we have, Schafer reasoned. No point in an alpha strike if you don't know your enemy's defensive capabilities. Some movement could be detected visually as the light bounced off the edge of a shifting body within the circle. It was hard to see, but Schafer could make out a vague, thin profile. Whatever it was wide but thin. Come on, let's see what you are, Schafer beckoned. As they drew closer, Schafer could see they were biological. But more than that, they were actual creatures. They started to veer a little, and more of the ship could be determined. They looked like something like a manta ray, albeit with an exoskeleton and diaphanous membranes. It was still unclear whether they were creatures or bioships. They certainly looked more like actual creatures, but they'd already seen proof of the Naled using different forms to perform functions, so it was reasonable to assume this applied to these ships as well. They're entering range of the main cannon, sir. Hold fire. Let's see what they do first, Schafer analyzed. It was curious that they were not following up with their initial strike with another. It was almost as if they were goading him into firing. Maybe that was the idea. Are there any other orbital bodies that could potentially be bioships? Schafer couldn't shake the feeling that this was bait. 14 potentials, Denham answered. A further 12 outliers. They're a distraction, Schafer commented. There are more out there waiting. Not all the potentials could be bioships. There only has to be one more out there to spring a trap, Schafer remarked. Where's our inbound ships? They're 20 seconds out. As soon as they're on board, Hard turn the Liberator and prepare for immediate slide to the jump gate. Inform Commander Voight and Flight Commander Sokolov of our intentions. Code only. No open comms. Kane, prepare for the slide. Acknowledged, Captain. We're withdrawing. Only a fool takes a fight knowing there's an ambush coming, Schafer contended. The ships continued on their course, approaching with an eccentric angle, but still not firing. They were close enough now that they could see them in greater detail. Their form managed to provoke an equal amount of awe and revulsion. Majestic in one way, but also hitting that primal disgust button humans possessed for all things invertebrate. There was a tense period, each second passing with deepening anticipation. This was the worst moment, Schafer thought to himself, the moment where they were just waiting for the worst to happen. All inbound ships have returned and in the hangars. Kane, initiate hard turn. Alarm started ringing as the maneuver was initiated. The sudden shift in inertia was going to cause a few problems across the ship, and there would likely be unforeseen injuries as the crew were sent sprawling, but it was necessary. Any delay in withdrawal would gift any ambushers vital time in attacking them. Retracting swarm shield. Being a physical object, or rather a swarm of tiny physical objects that could coalesce, the swarm shield had to be retracted before the slide. This left them with a time period where they had solely their armor to rely on, and therefore left them more vulnerable. This meant the transition between the defensive deployment and the slide had to be as minimal as possible. Sir, multiple enemy targets detected, at least 12 of them. They know we're leaving. No point in stealth now, Schafer observed. Fire at will, suppression protocol. Suppression was the key here. The intent was not to destroy any of the Naled ships, just to prevent them from firing. If any ships were destroyed, Schafer would not shed a tear, but defensive tactics had to outweigh offensive ones in this situation. The display still showed the original 2 bioships, with another 2 reticules, appearing to denote another pair at a greater distance. They were heading directly for them now, rushing to intercept their prey before it escaped. Harpoons detected inbound. Fire all countermeasures. Put up a wall between us and them, Schafer barked. Doctor, what kind of damage are we looking at here? Unknown, sir, but these harpoons don't need warheads to cause significant damage. At a high enough velocity, their mass will be enough. They put everything we have into stopping them, Schafer responded. Kane, still a few seconds before we can initiate slide, Captain. The Liberator poured as many projectiles, energy beams, and missiles as it could manage, blanketing the immediate area in a blizzard of explosions and shrapnel. One of the incoming Naled ships was caught in a flurry and was decimated, shriveling up as it died. Each of the incoming harpoons was destroyed as it entered range. The screen of fire proving effective, but it was a defense they could not continue indefinitely. The Naled ships were closing in, with more emerging from their hibernation. One of the ships was getting dangerously close, managing to evade most of the fire with an almost balletic grace, now starting to flex as though it were aiming to grab hold of the Liberator. Its scale was more apparent now it was close. The Naled ship was much smaller than the Liberator, but their strength in numbers could well overwhelm them. If they had decided to latch onto the ship, they had no means of peeling them off, and they would be defenseless. But what was the purpose? Was this a form of boarding the ship? Get security to the areas nearest the Naled ship. If they're trying to board us, I want to give them a suitable greeting. Slide engaged, Kane countered. All of the cannon batteries, missile launchers, and laser weapon systems shut down as the slide was triggered. This was an automatic safety precaution, as any projectiles caught in the space-time bubble would emerge at the destination with their inertia restored. If the space-time bubble popped amongst friendlies, those projectiles could become unexpected friendly fire. As local space-time was distorted and then ripped loose of the universe, the closest Naled ship was torn in half, one half within the bubble, the other half outside. There was the briefest of moments where this was registered before the Liberator was hurled at a phenomenal speed towards the jump gate. The front half of the Naled ship hung inside the local space-time bubble, slowly shriveling, blood spilling into the vacuum. It drifted towards the Liberator before colliding with it. There was a bump, but nothing with too much inertia now the bioship was limp. Good timing, Kane. Now that was something new, Kane remarked with interest. Do you think the crew can survive out there? Let's assume that they can, and get those soldiers into sections just in case, Schafer determined. And let's not relax just yet. We have to assume that they are in pursuit and will follow us to the gate, so expect them to arrive just after us. Kane, how quickly can you initiate the jump? It will take approximately 30 seconds after our arrival, give or take a few seconds for SpaceTime to merge. 30 seconds is a long time, Kane. It's the best I can do, Captain. Even with a fixed destination, there are exceptional numbers of calculations to solve before we can jump. Webster, ensure all weapon systems are ready to fire as soon as we arrive. Yes, sir. There would be a brief pause as they continued their slide toward the jump gate, but Schafer had to assume hostilities would resume almost immediately. This was an interval, not a cessation. He watched the Naled bioship slide around the hull as it slowly started to drift away again, trailing blood as it did so. It was a grim spectacle, but not without its own perverse beauty. Disengaging slide, Kane's voice punctuated. There was a jolt as the space-time bubble around the ship merged with local space-time, and the remains of the bioship and the camera stream started to drift away from the Liberator. Kane, start the jump process as soon as you're able. Any sign of the Naled? None at the moment, Captain. Let's hope it takes them longer to get here than we need to jump. Now began the anxious period of waiting, counting down the seconds before they could escape. Schafer hoped it would take enough time for the Naled to respond, that they could be out of the Sierra system before they arrived. Given the current lack of information, they weren't even aware if the bioships were slide-capable, or jump-capable for that matter. It would be foolish to make any assumptions, especially in light of their tactics back at Sierra Lament. That shows strategic thinking and a higher level of intelligence. If they were capable of that, and harnessing space travel, no matter how unconventional the means, they may have means to slide and jump as well. Get ready, Schafer warned, silently counting the seconds to himself. 15 seconds went by with no incident, and he was starting to feel a little more optimistic, but he tried to squash the feeling. Optimism had no place in combat, and left the door open to complacency. Maybe they're not slide-capable. The way today has gone, Doctor, I wouldn't bet on that. It took another 5 seconds to prove Schafer right. 2 Naled ships suddenly appeared next to them, emerging from their own slides, instantaneously to the eye. 2 targets acquired. Open fire, Schafer commanded. Try and take them out before the others get here. All of the Liberator's battery is capable of targeting the 2 ships' open fire, raining a barrage of projectiles on the ships. One of them was destroyed instantly, but the other managed to start swimming through space in an attempt to avoid the onslaught. It still took heavy damage, and realizing it couldn't take much more, it started moving away. 4 more targets acquired, now 6. They'll all be here shortly, Schafer grimly observed. Kane! 10 seconds, sir. Keep firing. Prioritize any incoming harpoons. We don't know what they're capable of, and we don't want to find out the hard way. 12 harpoons detected, Captain. Now 5 more. This was the alpha strike he'd been expecting. Put everything we can between us and those harpoons. Not one of them is to get through. Every countermeasure the Liberator possessed was activated and filled the space around the massive ship. Several harpoons were destroyed effectively. Another was splintered but not annihilated, and the fragments torn to the Liberator with extreme force, each splinter causing explosions with the kinetic force it wielded. The ship's armor held, but if that was the reaction to the remains of a single harpoon, it didn't take much extrapolation to realize a complete one striking the hull could wreak havoc. More Naled ships were approaching, and each processive second brought more of them, and the void started to fill with harpoons. 40 harpoons incoming, Captain! The alpha strike was growing, and with the proliferation of projectiles, the countermeasures they were laying down simply wasn't going to be enough. Then came the magic moment. All the guns stopped as the safety measures kicked in. Jump engaged, Kane spoke. With that, space-time rippled, and the ship jolted again as it left space-time and entered the conduit, racing towards the destination at incomprehensible speed. The conduit, the medium through which travel between jump gates was possible. It was a place outside of space-time and still largely beyond human science. They understood the jump gates, but they had next to no knowledge of the medium between them. It wasn't even certain that it even existed, or whether it was just human perception filling in something it couldn't understand with a rough approximation. A few seconds later, they emerged in the neighboring system with a jolt. "Thank you, Lady Luck," Pilot Awemi cheered. "Don't get complacent just yet. We've escaped the assault, but they could still be starting their own jumps right now. So let's put a little distance between us and them, shall we?" "Yes, sir. Starting to align to the next jump gate." "Good work, Kane," Schafer congratulated. "Got our asses out just in time." "It's what I'm designed to do," Kane shrugged. "Okay then. Let's get to a safe distance and we can think about what to do next."